McCartha, and we are going to crack the code of company culture. How does understanding company culture boost your success in business and life? Well, hang out with us and we'll talk about that. I am joined by two of my really good friends today, so it is going to be a lot of fun. But I want to remind you that you are also part of the show on the couch. So make sure you are putting your comments in the chat if you have questions, or if you want to add to the conversation, we will show them down below. So please be part of this conversation with us. But right now, let's meet my co-host. I have Caitlyn and Amy here, and I'm going to start off by asking you a question, and then you can introduce yourself and tell us how you came about this. All right, the question for you is, why are you passionate about helping people's brand, brand reputation through company culture using your zone of genius? Caitlyn, I'm going to start with you.
So I'm a website designer who helps local service-based businesses with their websites. And I usually start that with the branding as a key piece, because the way a website looks and feels shows up across your entire company, including the logo itself, but the colors, the fonts, all of that. And so that is part of the brand reputation. And that's a huge piece of then the company culture that goes with it. If everything feels cohesive and everyone's confident in what they're representing for their business and their company, that's going to show up in everything that they do.
Awesome. Yes, Amy.
So as a communication consultant, everything I do, whether it's with my private consulting clients or with any group that I present in front of, it's all with the objective of bridging the gap between themselves and their audience. And in this case, their audience could be their workforce. Their audience could be their customers. Their audience could be their prospects. You know, when we are in a space where we're all speaking the same language, we can all be on the same page. So when it comes to company culture, when you're speaking language that resonates what is truly happening within your company culture, you're able to talk about your greatness in such a way that your audience will understand you. And then that creates a whole lot of transparency and authenticity and harmony.
Absolutely. So for me, you know, my piece in this puzzle is your profile picture, your headshot, how you represent yourself. And I believe the company culture really it should represent your values. It should represent, you know, actually everything about what you believe and what you stand for. And that starts with your profile picture. And that's where I come in, teaching people that your headshot should be one of the biggest parts of your marketing strategy. And the reason that I love that is because then everything can go together all in one voice. You have your image that matches, and then you have Amy with the words, and you know, then you have Caitlyn with the website. So everything is representing the same thing. Everything is consistent and saying the same message, representing that company culture, and really thinking about what your values are, what you represent, and not just going in willy-nilly like, oh, I'm going to throw up a logo, I'm going to throw up a website, I'm going to throw up some words, and here's a picture. I looked really good when I wore that thing, and here it is. When you do things with intention, you're able to convey your message. And I think that's really the important thing here. So I am so excited. Let's get motivated. All right. Amy, I'm going to start with you. Why is understanding your company's culture critical for thriving in life and business? Why is it important that we understand?
Because to prosper in life requires building trust with whoever you meet. And if the communication you have for how you describe your company culture versus the real picture of what your company culture is, if those two are disconnected and completely different, good luck trying to build trust with your future customers and your current customer base, because they're going to see that. They're going to see that. And you're also going to see it for yourself, that within your culture, your company culture, you're going to see how people are around each other. Are they passive aggressive? How are they treating you versus someone else? Is there some weird hierarchy that is actually very toxic and damaging? And so if you're not truly understanding your company culture, then you can't possibly address some of these key issues that are being shown to the external world. So that's why it's really important to not only understand what's happening with your company culture, but it's also really good to know how you're presenting yourself to the world. And even if your company culture, there's nothing wrong with it. Like if you are saying one thing and your company culture is actually something else, that is going to lead to discord later.
Exactly. It's going to bring confusion later if you're not clear on it and you're not presenting it correctly and you're not being honest, because we've all probably been in situations where they say one thing, but everybody knows it is not that way. So, okay, Caitlyn, I'm going to let you answer that question.
I definitely agree with everything. I mean, I think that company culture is more than just the front facing. It is all the internal communications and how the employees interact with each other via each department, hierarchy, management to employees. Like it's all internal. And again, that disconnect sometimes when you know that things are not super great in the back end, but like public facing, they're, it seems like it's the dream and all, everything that they want. So it is trying to always make sure that everything's cohesive and that there's a set of like standards in particularly communication. I think is always key in a company, both internally and externally.
I love that. I think communication, I'm gonna yes and to the communication. I think it's really important that, and that goes back to even the first thing that we were talking about is being aware of it and then being able to communicate it, keeping that authenticity and honesty and integrity throughout every area of, the way you handle everything. And even if you are a solopreneur and you are the company, you still work with other people. You work with vendors, you work with, different people, and how you work with them, and understanding that even though you may be alone, you're never alone. You're always working with other people, and you need to continue keeping those values pure, because you at one point may want to scale up. And if you do, then you need to already have that foundation set so that we know what you stand for, who you are, how you do things. I think that's really important. Okay, are you ready to be inspired? All right. How are you? How have you experienced a company not being in tune to the culture and in the past, and how did you overcome it? So I'm sure you guys were never in this place, but you've probably been a part of a different company, or maybe you've actually stumbled on that yourself. So Caitlyn, how have you experienced this in the past, and how has it affected you, and how did you overcome it?
I think that, it's back to that internal versus front facing communication, and being in places, especially when I was like bopping around as a freelancer, inside, like, kind of like day rate kind of freelancing, back in New York City. There was definitely certain times where you could tell that the team was so much more cohesive and it matched the that front facing communication of like what that brand was on the outside. And then there were other times where you could just tell that there was definitely toxic management, things like that, that just, even on, so again, I don't have a ton of experience of how I overcame it, but that idea of like, you can totally tell the difference when you walk into an office, especially as a freelancer, sort of like as a guest to the space, how it feels. And like, if you need to just like, I don't really need to come back here again, sort of situation. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what popped into my head.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Amy, how about you? Have you had any experiences like that in the past?
Yes, namely, what I noticed, whether it was from my own experience or working with clients, that a lot of the the company cultures that were disconnected were because the leadership team they had one mindset, which was very different than everyone else's mindset. And because of that, there was not only discord and miscommunication, but there was a lot of segmentation and compartmentalization of people. Like they went into their own different groups, created their own different hierarchies. And before you knew it, there were people who were micromanaging over here, and then other people that were hiding from their job, like quiet quitting. And so it doesn't feel good to be in that environment. And so how I have overcome it when I was in that environment for my own job, I essentially I went down my entrepreneurial path, and I because I realized I was compartmentalizing myself, and I lost track of who I was, and so I went down my entrepreneurial path. That's a whole other story. And what I recognized was that there were other parts of me. There was more to me than this culture over here. And then when it came to my clients, being that third party person, it allowed me to be that non-judgmental mediator, to just kind of be able to observe the different dynamics going on, and then being able to see, okay, like this person feels this way about this person because of this other thing that had happened. So let me try to go about it this way, as opposed to the original way I was going to approach this person, now that I know this background information. And that was only because I was able to kind of poke around and be like, so that seemed a little interesting when that person said this. There's something more there. So I kind of end up being a little investigator.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I have a different experience than most people because I have been self-employed my entire life. But in that, I have worked on different projects with different people. I've been involved with, other things. And I know that I've been in situations where, and I think Amy mentioned this, and I think this is the key word, leadership. And that's what we're talking about. If you're an entrepreneur, you are the leader of your business. But when I've been involved in projects where the leaders weren't good leaders, and they didn't have a clear vision, and they didn't have clear policies in place, they didn't have their values, strong values as to how they wanted things to run. And then you've got people yelling and screaming, and people not getting breaks, and overworking, and ended up being in really dangerous situations. Because for me, if I'm filming a project or something, there's a lot of people that have to come together to make this happen. And if the leadership is disorganized and, angry or frustrated, then that's going to trickle down to everyone. So what I've learned from that is really making policies plain and clear, making my values plain and clear, and making sure that as a leader, I communicate what I expect up front. I know, what is expected if you're working for me. I don't want this to happen. I'd rather us all work together. If there's a problem, we're going to communicate it, and we're going to figure out things together. And I think that's something that that we all have to really think about, is as leaders, again, even if it's just us, we are still the leaders, and we have to make sure that we are leading our clients, leading our vendors, and everything in our values and in the policies that we want to make sure that we have. All right. Amy, you were talking. Oh, never mind. I was going to pull back into that conversation, because before the cameras rolled, we were talking about policies, but we're going to keep networking, and I'm sure Amy will throw it in anyway. Or was it Caitlyn? I don't know. Anyway, Amy, we're going to start with you. Who should you ask to help if you are trying to improve your company culture? Who should you ask to help?
Oh, that is such a tough question, because it really depends on what's been going on. And so I would actually say, and this may sound probably different than maybe what you would expect, I would have someone in your accounting department come to help. And here's why. Here's why: because numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie, and numbers measure performance, and numbers measure revenue. And the top line of your P&L sheet, your gross revenue, that's going to tell you something's going on. And so if you're seeing that sales have gone down, if you're seeing that payroll has gone up, that's a really great starting point to figure out how to unwrap your company culture. And so I would say enlist someone from your accounting department or a very good business consultant who will look at the numbers first in order to decipher what is really going on with or at least the starting point of what's happening with your company culture.
I love it. I love it. Caitlyn?
I mean, I love that too. That was like, as you said, like you're not going to expect that, but it makes total sense. And I think that's, as a solopreneur, you think about business consultants and business coaches that are always kind of coming at you from the mindset piece, which is huge. But yeah, the numbers don't lie. And as a creative, that numbers are not my forte. I avoid them and I hide from them all the time. But yeah, you're not going to make any improvements, both profit wise, but like emotionally as a group, especially if you're in a company with a team, if it feels stressed or weird about the money and the profit and how things are working. So I totally agree with that. I do think that if you're in a smaller situation where you don't have an accountant, it would be finding a consultant or a third party, maybe even a brand strategist too, if they can come in with the messaging and really kind of look at it from the top down, where it comes to like not necessarily just the visuals, which is what I do, but that messaging piece, the copy, the cohesive voice of your company.
Absolutely. And I think in order to add to that is really having a plan. So sometimes I think it's just setting yourself down and looking around. And if things aren't working the way you were hoping, why is that? And taking that responsibility as the leader and say, okay, what do I want to have happen? Looking at maps, being other companies that are running smooth, what are they doing to make themselves run smooth? Looking in the mirror at yourself, what am I doing wrong? And really writing it down on paper, what your vision for the company is, and then kind of brainstorming, like, how can we make this vision, how can we make this vision happen? What changes do I need to make as a leader to lead my company the way I want it to go? And that's sometimes talking to your other people in the company, like, hey, I notice that productivity is really down. How can I help you succeed in this? What are your goals outside of my company? Like, why are you working here? You're not just working with me for a paycheck. Like, you're working here because I want you to be passionate about this. So how can I help you? Do you want to take on a different responsibility? And really talking and communicating and opening that up, because I believe that if people are working with me, for me, with me, that they should be getting something out of it besides money. Like, I want them to like go home every day like, yeah, that was awesome. And whether it's writing something on their resume or whether it's the skills that I'm able to teach them or the experience, but they should be able to be in a place where they're getting more than just a paycheck working from you. So really finding out what that is, listening and asking questions and finding out what that is. What is it that would make you make those numbers change, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like, what is it that would make those numbers change? And just really being honest with yourself. And sometimes looking in that mirror is the hardest place to look, because we can blame everybody else all day long. Like, if they're not doing their job, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. But we got to look in that mirror sometimes. Okay, so now it's speed round time. Speed round. What is your one tip to building your brand by understanding your company values? Okay, so one tip, building your brand, company values. All right. I don't know who I started with last time. I'm just Caitlyn. I'm Amy. Amy, that's what I meant.
One tip I'll say is build your brand with your company values by staying curious about everything. And so when you're staying curious, you're able to take in all the feedback you need, whether it is very, very constructive feedback or, positive feedback. Everything is really useful. And when you're able to be in that curious place, you're able to stay creative and build your brand around your company values rather than worrying about, oh my gosh, what will other people think? Like, wait, hold a second. Like, I'm curious, why do people want this? Or why do I want this? And let me just kind of piece that together like my masterful puzzle and create my company culture from the ground up like I want it to, but be curious and learning the entire time.
I love that. And if you've hung out with me at all, I like the curious factor. Like, let's find that out. Okay, Caitlyn, what is your one tip?
My one tip, I actually kind of want to go techie on this and just say for building your brand with company values is to also know how to use your website as a tool that covers all of the bases. So it has that great like about and value statement if that's something you want forefront, but also like on the tech side to make sure that you're covering all your bases when it comes to like privacy policies and stuff like that, because that is also just a way to show that you are an authority and that you know how to protect your site visitors, which adds to your company culture and values by showing that you're like protecting the information that you collect and what you use it for.
Awesome. Okay, my one tip's going to be really quick, but then I'm going to put the two of you on the spot, and I'm going to like break protocol and ask you another question. Okay, so my one tip is know what you want your company culture to be. Like, actually write down what you desire to have. Take the time to look inward and figure that out. That's my one tip. Okay, guys. Now, we are talking about company culture and branding and putting that together. And both of you are genius branders, right? And so I want to, I'm going to put Amy on the spot first. So how would you describe using your voice, because you're a storyteller, using your voice, and that could be spoken or written, to really express company culture? I mean, company culture is your values, your policies, all of those things. So how would you kind of I really want to, and I want people to understand that brand and company culture should really be woven together, because your brand is what represents you, and that really should be woven together. So Amy, I'm putting you on the spot.
No worries. I figured you're going to ask me a question like this. Actually, I can bring out a real life example. So with a client of mine, they have about 40 retail locations in Southern California. I had to keep them anonymous because I signed something, but they're a lovely family. They've been around for several decades. And I remember they hired me to write their company culture story. And what essentially that was interviewing every single stakeholder, because there's 13 of them, and getting their view of how the company started. And then also from there, I had to piece together what the main story was from these 13 perspectives and really see like what values were really showing up based on what they were talking about, based on what happened originally. And what ended up happening was that this story was used only for internal purposes because it had a marketing story already. But I basically took the marketing story and I added to it based on the accounts that I had collected. And now it's used as an internal piece for their workforce. So that way their workforce understood where those company values came from, and then also appreciate some of the things that they still hold dear to their hearts till today. So that's how I personally help my clients with piecing together the company culture, or at least being able to convey what their company culture is by looking at their story and then also seeing like what are their true company values and how does it actually show up? How did it show up? And does it still exist today? And in what form does it exist?
I love that. I love that. Okay, Caitlyn, you are a graphic designer. You are a web designer. So how does company culture tie in with your branding, and by using your website, by using your logo, even your logo, all these things that present you as a brand. How would you say people should tie that together with their company culture?
I think that it's always, I always get sort of like question marks when I ask some of my branding questions, because I have a few sets of just silly questions of if you could be an era, what would your company's where would you what time frame would you live in? What's your favorite decade? Things like that. But it helps just kind of add that personality. So I just finished a lawyer's website, and they, lawyers can tend to feel pretty stodgy, but these two, they are not at all. And so I wanted to add a little fun, a little extra color to their logo. Is really simple. That's the difference between a logo and full brand suite, is you can add on to it. It can be a 2-color logo that's, blue and gray, but then adding in that pop of purple and yellow that comes out, but adds that flair, and just shows that, being a lawyer doesn't have to mean that your whole website is just pictures of gavels and I'm forgetting what those are called. But so I think that there's always a way to expand your brand and show your personality. And then I've also had clients that do want that more straightforward look, where it's more tame and more simple. But I think that that's where the branding piece can really think of who are you and what do you want to represent? And it can be done in a way that's not in your face. Not everything has to be spelled out. There's ways to do it visually that really can, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So does a set of colors and a way you present it to the world.
I love that. We're laughing over here. That is awesome. So I think, because, the way I help businesses represent themselves is with their profile pictures, with their headshots, with the images on their website, on their social media, and, on their podcast, all these things. And the one thing that I think is important that we all recognize is that two things can be the same. You can be very professional and trustworthy and fun and silly at the same time. And I like that with the lawyers. You were saying we could do the boring logo and then just add that pop of flair in there, because
it's not boring, simple.
Simple.
There you go.
Simple. But and add that extra little flair. But it can all we are all complex humans. I'm one way with my friends, I'm one way with my clients, I'm one way with my children, and I'm one way with my husband, but I'm still all me. There's that cord that's always there. That's Peggy. That's true Peggy, right? It's still Peggy, even though there's different sides to me, right? Mm-hmm. And we can use that in our company culture and in our branding. We're still true to our values, but every once in a while we're silly. Every once in a while we're stern. Maybe we're, extra approachable, and maybe we're standoffish. And those can all be true in the right places. And in the right places, that helps move our story forward and our values forward, instead of it can still be consistent, even though it's different, because it's moving the story forward and really expanding and showing the whole picture of us and all of our values that we want to bring to the table. Ben and Jerry's, they're funny, right? They're ice cream, but they have a political stand. They're ice cream with a political stand. I mean, that's crazy, right? So you can both make great ice cream and make a statement in your policies, in that, and it's all together. So I think when we're talking about company culture, it's really can be all woven together with our branding to tell the world what we believe in, what we expect, and how we act. So I think that was fun, guys. Does anybody want to add? Does anybody want to jump in before we start announcements and say anything else there? Did we cover it? Did we do it?
I just want to add that when you think about your company core values, it's really important to understand not only what your top 5 are, but what your number 1 is, because chances are that number one core value is in everything that you do. So for instance, my number one core value is compassion. And the reason why that's my number one core value is because when I listen to my clients and I listen to the people around them, I have to take a very non-judgmental stance, a very empathetic stance, and that allows me to really listen for what people are and are not saying. And it's interwoven. Compassion's interwoven in everything that I do. So chances are that you do already have a number one core value. You just need to understand which one that is, and then notice it as you go along your journey.
I can see that about you, Amy. I can see that that is your number one core value. I think for me, it is integrity. Like if I say it, like hell, no matter what, hell, high water, it will happen. Somehow it will happen. I can see that about you, though, Amy. You are a very compassionate person, and I've worked with you before, and that's true. And I like that. That was great advice. Okay, we're going to go to announcements, unless Caitlyn has anything else to add. Okay, Caitlyn, you're going to start. I want to know what's going on with you and how people can find you.
Awesome. So you can find me at CaitlynHarrisonCreative.com. And I'm offering a free kind of pick my brain consultation thing. If you have questions, if you want to talk about privacy policies, even like if that sparked like, hey, I don't know if I have that, feel free to just book a call with me and let's have a chat.
Yay. All right, Amy, how can people find you?
Well, you could go to my website, untoldstory.enterprises.com, but I also have a book coming out on March 14th. It's called Listen Up, The Secret Language of Intuitives, Creatives, and Analytical Thinkers. And essentially, me being all three of them, I recognize that there are language differences if you are leaning into one over the other. And so in this book, I lay out different keywords, different communication strategies in order for everyone to build more communication bridges between themselves and someone else that may think a little differently. It's just a matter of understanding what language you're speaking, and for them to understand what language you're speaking. And then that way you both are able to do magical things like make awesome collaborations or become clients for each other, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm having a book launch party on March 14th. You all are invited. We're going to be on Zoom and we're going to have a blast celebrating
all
this.
The cool kids are going to be there. I'm going to be there. So make sure that you come and hang out with Amy and me. I'll be there.
Yay!
Caitlyn, are you going to be there? I'm putting you on the spot. Are you going to be there, Caitlyn?
Oh, I'm going to click the link and find out and see about signing up.
Okay. Yay. Well, I always love to hang out with you and chat with you. If you're interested in figuring out how you can get more effective headshots, even if you're not local to LA, I'm happy to sit down with you and help you, give you some ideas how you can work with your own photographer and get effective headshots. Or if you're in the LA area, Southern California, you can definitely come hang out with me. But let's chat for free and see what we can do. Headshotstrategist.com. Okay, now let's go to our community announcements.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed the show today. We have so many community announcements to help you understand how to really leverage the impact of this community. First things first, you can watch this show. That's right, not 1, but 2 days a week. That's right, on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time or Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time in either Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Now, if you think like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do because I can't watch it live. Well, guess what? You can also listen on the go. That's right. We are on all of your favorite podcast locations. Yes, your Spotify's, your iHeartRadios, your Apple Podcasts, etc. So go and look there so that you can stay connected and listen to these crazy people talk about all these amazing business topics. And if you are interested in being one of the crazy people talking about those business topics, then you can be on the show. If you want to join us on the show, you can actually go to www.MinkLifeMotivation.com, where you can sign up to be a co-host, not just on the couch, but on the screen. On Wednesday, we will on Wednesday. That's right. On Wednesday, we will actually be having Peggy again, having another conversation about building your brand. And then on Thursday of next week, we will have Colleen Struby, who will be helping you boost your influence. So as you can see, so many amazing shows. But if you are a speaker and you are interested in seeing some platforms, this next message is for you.
Calling all dynamic speakers. So many people are struggling. Together, we have the power to create a global impact. We are looking for dynamic speakers to partner with us in our mission to help millions live healthy, wealthy, and fulfilled. We need speakers in 4 areas of expertise: personal development, business development, brand development, network development. Apply today at www.nextglobalvirtualconference.com.
If you have never experienced one of our conferences, make sure that you come and be a part of that. If you are a dynamic speaker, make sure that you hunt us down and get involved, because it is fun. Caitlyn is going to be a first-time speaker. Amy's an all-pro at this. I'm an all-pro at this. So we want to have fun with you. So guys, we did great. This was so much fun. Thank you for hanging out with me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. We'll see you on Wednesday.